Hi, HR Nation. Welcome to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, we're joined by Tim Mezheritsky, who's the HR Director for Global Supply Chain and European Operations at BD. Tim, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, Chris. I'm really good today. Thank you very much for the invitation, and it's a pleasure for me to be here today.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us, Tim. Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today at BD.
I'm relatively new in BD, 11 months now, but it has been really an exciting journey, a lot of learning, and a lot of opportunities to join the new industry for myself. I've never worked in medtech before. And maybe a couple of words about my background. By education, I'm an economist, and I got into HR by coincidence. It was not a plan in the beginning, but it happened. And actually, I don't regret that. I really enjoy being in HR, working as an HR business partner. And in my career, I've been in operational HR roles. I've been in HR business partner roles. And today with BD, as you just mentioned, Chris, I'm supporting two major customers, global supply chain organization. It's roughly 2,500 people. And Europe operations, it's close to 6,000 people based across various plants in Europe.
We have to go back 1 second. How did an economist end up in HR?
I don't want actually to hurt the feelings of the colleagues and friends I have in finance and in other functions related to finance, but I found it a little bit boring.
What was it about HR that drew you to it?
HR is one of those unique functions within any business which cuts across the whole company. So when you're in HR, you have an opportunity to see various facets. It relates to finance, it relates to strategy, it relates to daily operations, it relates to challenges managers are facing when working with their organizations, organizational designs, and so on. So this is something which is really unique about HR, as you have an opportunity during your day touch the processes, the projects, initiatives, and I would even say lives of the associates which belong to the same organization.
Mm-hmm. So where we are now then, why did you take on this role at BD? What was the challenge they were facing, and so why did you feel like you was the right man for the role?
This is a better question for my managers and my customers to ask.
So 11 months, right? Just for everyone listening, you've been there 11 months, right?
Yeah,
so still early days.
Yeah, it is. The decision to move to BD was a purely family-driven decision. Prior to BD, I was with Amcor. I worked in Zurich, but my family remained in French-speaking part of Switzerland, not far away from Geneva. And despite the fact that when I was joining Amcor with my wife, we agreed that probably they will move and also join me in Zurich. When the question came up, like, do we move or not move? She said, no way. And I had to accept it. After commuting for a bit more than 2 years, I realized that it's too tough. And I started to look for a job back in the French-speaking part. And I came across BD. The reason why I actually accepted the offer, besides the personal side of the things, is the role itself. Because for me, it provided a great opportunity to work in an environment where I would be seeing the whole end-to-end process. So global supply chain and operations, in BD we call it integrated supply chain, and an opportunity to work with the customers representing this whole flow, seeing the process from the very beginning when the customer is placing an order, or if we are reacting to a need of a customer, creating or adjusting the product, then planning, then producing, then putting into our distribution centers or warehouses, and then delivering to the customer, and working with the customer, because back office customer service is also part of global supply chain organization. I thought, wow, that's a fantastic opportunity. Mm-hmm. And in my prior career, I worked with operations, but that was several plants which the company I worked for at that time had in Russia. For me, it was a great experience to make a step and see how plants and operations are working in a European environment. So I have plants within my remit of responsibility which are located in Spain, in Ireland, in UK, in Italy, in Bosnia, and getting that experience was really very, very much appealing to me. And the last but not the least were the BD values, because the BD values, which are about protecting people's health, helping our customers, the patients, to get well, is not only reflected in our statements and values, but that's what we live through day by day. All our efforts, and I'm not exaggerating here, are to make sure that we do that we deliver to what we say, and the BD is doing its utmost in order to make sure that our products are of the best quality and delivered to customers when they are really needed.
There's nothing else that you need really to keep you motivated, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what helps you to wake up in the morning, get out of bed, and then come to the office when you realize that you are not only making an impact on a specific area of your responsibility, your customers, but also it has a bigger purpose. And for me, that's really very important and resonates.
What fascinated me during our conversation as well is that you had to build the entire function from scratch, right? The HR, global supply chain, and European operations function. Where did you start? So you've just jumped into the role. It's been 11 months. What does the first few months look like for you?
Yeah, first couple of months were a lot of learning. BD is a complex organization. For a newcomer, it's not that easy to understand exactly how our complex matrix structure is working. Mm-hmm. One of the requirements when we look for people, in order to help somebody to better settle in the organization and find her or his way, is collaboration. We are about collaboration. We are about making sure that we involve the people, and sometimes it represents an additional step, and I know that it works for certain organizations, doesn't work for others, but in BD, collaborating is the road to success. So understanding that modus operandi of the company was very important in the very beginning. And of course, as it was the new role, it was not a replacement or backfill or anything. The role was just created, and I had to build, as you said, Chris, everything from scratch from the beginning. I, of course, had to understand what actually my customers, the head of global supply chain, the head of Europe operations, would expect from HR. What's their strategy? Where do they see their organization in 3-5 years from now? And what type of capabilities from the point of view of organizational design, from the point of view of people capabilities, they would like to have there. And of course, it's all nice things, and you can be a superb HR professional and you can know how to do an org design in 2 minutes. But unless you also build that trust with your customers, no matter how good you are technically, it will be very difficult to succeed if your customers do not trust you and they believe that what you are proposing, the approaches, the concept, whatever, are going to make sense for them and their organizations. And I did invest quite some time in making sure that I connect really well with both key customers I have, and they have this trust that whatever I might be coming with make sense and can work for their organizations.
Yeah, you made such an important point there, because all of the successful leaders I speak to, they spend sometimes the first year building the trust with their stakeholders and with their customers before they make any real change. Because if you don't do that, as you said, you can have the best strategy in the world, but it will fail. If you don't have the buy-in, it's not going to work. And there's no easy way of getting it either. You have to, it's literally meeting them face to face, one-on-one, and asking questions and understanding their needs, concerns, etc. Were there any surprises? What were their requirements? What were, when you sat down with them, were there any curveballs that kind of caught you off guard, or what was the main feedback you got from both those key stakeholders on the supply chain side and operations? What did they need? What did they require from HR?
I wouldn't say that there was something which would be, out of this world, something strange, if I can put it like that. Both of them, they want their organizations to be successful. They want to have strong teams. They want to have strong strategy in place. and they want to have right capabilities in place, which will make sure that all the strategies are executed and the organizations are moved ahead. As I said, in BD, collaboration is one of those elements which is really valued and important. And it was interesting for me to see that in several leadership teams within these organizations, we had some gaps in that area, up to quite senior leaders within the organization. So unfortunately, one of the roles which I had to play there is to raise these questions. Why is it like that? Why not like that? And how we can improve it. And this is one of the roles HR has to play. Absolutely, it's great to put developmental programs in place. It's great to execute on org design strategies. But sometimes, as I say, a question why is actually not a stupid question.
Shouldn't that be the role of every leader and not just HR?
It is, but you see, HR in that respect, it has an opportunity for a benefit of a doubt. You are not reporting directly to that leader, at least the way how it's organized in BD. I'm reporting into HR function, and I support my customers. Obviously, they are very important to me, and they are the key drivers of what I do on a daily basis, but I'm not tied with that performance management, where sometimes I can say, okay, sorry, I don't understand, but why is it like that? Wouldn't it be simpler? Where sometimes people with direct line may have a concern saying, okay, this might be too political, or
Sure,
this
I
not
understand.
the right moment to ask this question.
Yeah, it puts the strain on you though, right?
Exactly.
But it's part of the role though.
It is a very important part of the role. And actually, I'm really lucky that both of the leaders I'm supporting, they are giving the space to ask these questions. And they would actually expect me not to sit silently in the corner and then speak up only when it comes to HR topic on the agenda list, but to challenge some of the discussions which are related to the business itself. Yeah, like to give you one example, we are launching an end-to-end tool which is called Control Tower, and this is a fantastic tool which will give our planners an opportunity to better plan and track where our products are, where they're sitting, when they are going to reach customers, if there are any risks associated with that. And I was part of the implementation team. On one hand, gave me an excellent opportunity to understand my customer, but on the other hand, I had this opportunity to coming as completely brand new, saying that, okay, guys, that's how you are thinking about it, but what about a different perspective? Initially, I remember there were a couple of surprised faces in the room. Actually, it was interesting. One of the guys with whom this project is really staying, who owns it within the global supply chain leadership team, invited me to one-to-one meeting, and we had a discussion of how we can actually reposition this project within the organization and communicate it better to the team. And that's when you are, you're really feeling, okay, probably I was asking the right questions initially. If you get that type of trust we spoke earlier, that the leaders are eager to listen to HR opinion, and they would see the value of what you can bring to the table.
Sometimes the best questions are the difficult ones. So it's great for you to come in and ask those questions, just even simply just saying why, why are we doing it that way? And because a lot of times people are like, because we've always done it this way. Yeah. that's why. So I'm glad that was the experience that you had from that. I think it's very, very important. And again, you've now gained more trust and respect with those leaders that you have in the organization. So what next? What are some of the other challenges that the leaders were facing, and how are you currently planning on helping them?
Yeah, if I talk about my other role, HR operations, the second part of it, the challenge there was that operations somehow from HR perspective and people perspective were always I don't want to say it too strongly, but sort of second-class citizen, with most of the focus from HR paid to commercial. Part of my role is to take the operations and issues we have from the point of view of people development, leadership, whatever, out to the surface and have a clear approach to it. One of the first things I've done is I pulled the HR team together. So I have 7 direct reports, various HR plant managers located in the region. So that was the first group I brought together. And I said, guys, now we are going to operate and work together hand in hand. We're going to learn from each other. We're going to put some projects together. We will set our own priorities, because I want to make sure that there is one clear people agenda for operations within the region. And it was really very well accepted, because they used to operate in their silos, not that often talking to each other, and already having a forum where they can communicate and exchange opinions and talk about the projects they're on was already a very good first step forward. And another element which I noticed, because they were sitting in their silos at the plants, we were not actually investing a lot in their development, providing feedback, making sure that there are mentors assigned to top talents in HR organization and operations, that all of them have the so-called career blueprints, as we call them in BD. This is actually your career plan for the next 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. So now they all do have it. And I saw my role there is to be that connector and also the network builder, helping them to be more effective. I can tell you that in the very beginning, when I had my first meeting with my team, it was 8 of us, so 7 plus me. Now I'm planning for the second HR Ops regional meeting, which will be in the beginning of November, and we are going to be 15. And it doesn't mean that other additional people reporting into me. No, they are plant managers, because we have more plants in Europe. They report into other business segments and mainly into US. Because I managed to make this network so effective, the word of mouth spread, and people started coming and saying, okay, can I also be a part of this network? Can I also connect with my colleagues and learn from them? It's also very good for me, because 2 of my bosses, the direct line boss and the dotted line boss, will be coming to that meeting in November. And they both volunteered themselves. I didn't even have to invite them. They said, okay, we want to come. We want to meet the team face to face and spend time with them, because it's really important that we understand what's happening, that they can share with us. They get the visibility towards the 2 top HR leaders in BD. And that's what is really important for me in this role of creating that type of network and opportunities. And of course, what's also very important if we talk about ops agenda in the region, BD is constantly evolving. We are challenging ourselves, and we are looking at our effectiveness. We look at our cost base. We look at our network infrastructure. And operations is also going through this critical assessment of, okay, where do we want to produce in the next 3 to 5 years from now? What's our footprint? Where do we have the right skills to produce a huge number of products? And BD is producing thousands and thousands of various medical devices, products, and so on. It's really now important for me that I am invited and I have a seat at the table when we are discussing the strategies of operations, because then I have an opportunity also to bring up that people perspective and see how we can better structure the organization and how we can move together with the operation strategy, ensuring that we have the right people in the right place at the right time.
I know you're early in, but in other companies, you've built functions before, right? So what advice would you give to other HR leaders that are stepping into a new role like this, starting from scratch? What advice would you give to them looking back? I know it's only 11 months in this company, but I believe you've done it before, right?
Not the first time. During one of my experiences, I learned it hard way. So I made mistakes.
No, and that everyone does, right? And that's why we have the show, to help other people avoid them.
Well, it happened with one of my roles, and it was like about 13, 15 years ago. Again, greenfield role. I stepped in as a HR leader for Eastern Europe region. And after 2 months, I said, okay, now I know what to do. And I put an HR plan together, a proposal, and then we had a leadership conference, a regional leadership conference, and the guys who were heads of countries and big regions or big sub-regions within Eastern Europe were present there. So 15 people sitting around the table, and then this guy comes up and he says, okay, here is the HR strategy, here is what we're going to do, here is how we're going to change things you work. And that was like an effect of a bomb explosion in the room. And I will never do that again. To answer your question, Chris, if you are new in the role, if you are new in the role or a company, two comes together, which is even more difficult, take the time. Don't try to rush. There is always a pressure. But don't try to change the world in the first 30 days. Actually, during the first 30 days, take a breath, and invest time into connecting with people. Have a coffee, have lunch, have a call or Skype with somebody who is not based at the same place with you, and introduce yourself, get to know others, and try to understand what's actually bothering them. What are the things they want to resolve, and position it in a way that, okay, I'm collecting the information and I will try to see how I can help you going forward. So they also see the value in this type of discussions, because they are also investing the time in having a call or a meeting with you. People like that attention, so use this opportunity. That would be my advice number one. Advice number two, we spoke about it already today, trust. Start with small things. Help a leader with a challenge. I'm just making it up. There is a performance issue. And I understand we all want to be strategic HR business partners. We want to work on strategy and 5-10 years plans, but also anticipate that leaders, they live their daily life. And a leader can have a performance issue in his or her team. Sit down with the leader and try to see how you can help. With these small things, when you are helping her or him to resolve it, you start building that trust. And again, this is requiring time, but if you rush and you do not concentrate on these smaller things, of course, they are very important, but not as like 5-year strategy, you build that trust. And then always share and be open. When you are talking with your key customers in the organizations you support, tell them what you think. Ask the questions if you don't understand something. Share some of your thoughts, your initial impressions, so that you get their perspectives, because there might be an explanation to certain things you might be accepting one way, but it's important that you also know the history and you get this feedback from the leaders, and then start building your plan together.
Yeah.
And never go to a presentation and
assuming you know it all.
Yeah, you know it all, and you present it cold. We know, and I know very well how it may end up. Socialize people with your ideas and proposals and your strategies. Make sure that they are aware, and when you are standing in front of the people, you will not see surprised faces or unhappy faces over there. So try to make as much prep work as possible.
At that point, they're kind of bought into you as well, right? So they want you to succeed. So now you've established the connections with the leaders, right? You've built the value, you've demonstrated value in small tasks, in small wins. I think it's important to get those small wins, like you said. What's the next step then?
Now we can start talking about more strategic things. Just to give you an example, within Europe operations, we launched a project which is related to creating sustainability within our workforce for today and for tomorrow. And this is very interesting project. Today, everybody likes to talk about big data and analytics and everything. We didn't go into very, very sophisticated things, but we collected data from the plants here in Europe, which would relate to turnover, to difficulty to fill. We compared ourselves high level from the point of view of the market. We have these regular exercises, which are called Voice of Associates or engagement surveys. So we extracted data from there. So we really did some analysis, and we realized that despite the fact that overall we are quite stable, quite okay in Europe operations overall, but there are definitely areas where we can improve. It depends by country and depends by area. In some countries, it's about benefits. In some countries, it's about high turnover. But what we've done as a result of it, we really had the full picture. We put a so-called heat map It's one pager where we have all the plants, and depending on where they sit from various dimensions, various KPIs, we were able to go to the business leaders and tell them, okay, here is the situation, the snapshot. It's not like precise science. We can move one plant a little bit here or a little bit there, but it doesn't change the background of what we found out. And we turn this into action plans. So now each plant has an action plan which is concentrated either on things related to total rewards or to associates engagement or to employer relations and so on. There are other elements which are covered. And when you are at that level of establishing the connect and building that trust in the numbers you are presenting, then you can already go to a more sophisticated things. Because as the next step, what we're going to do, we're going to start bringing this all together into the programs. Mm-hmm. So as of next fiscal year, which will start in October for us, we will be rolling out a very important initiative related to manager development, and it will concern the shift supervisors, operation supervisors. So actually the area which before was not that much covered or spoiled by various developmental activities, but we all know that for the success of stable operations, these guys are really critically important because they manage then the operators, the shop floor workers. And this is just an example, Chris, of those things which we started to cook, started to prepare, which will then go live in the next fiscal year for us.
Amazing. So plenty of work ahead of you.
Absolutely. And that's really cool because it gives you the satisfaction and it gives you an opportunity to learn.
Yeah. You spoke, and this is a bit off topic, but you spoke before about how diversity adds value to the business, and the same with culture as well. Could you share a bit more on your thoughts around that?
Yeah, actually, very good topic. Thank you very much for bringing it up. This relates to my personal experience. And I worked in various geographies with various leadership teams. And I can say that the strength of a leadership team or organization is in its diversity. Because I think you mentioned that earlier today, Chris, if everybody is of the same gender, same age, same background, it's boring. You never have an argument. You never have a healthy conflict discussion around the table. Everybody agrees, and it's not what we want. I think that for a HR person, it's very important on one hand to ensure that at the leadership table in your organization, you have this diversity. What's maybe evenly important is that you educate and coach your leaders on how to extract the best value out of it, because not all the leaders are comfortable and confident working with diverse teams. Mm-hmm. And here your role as an HR leader is helping that diverse team to mold better together, to get to know each other better, and then extract the best value out of its strengths.
How have you gone about doing that in the past or now in the business?
I can give you one example, which was really one of the learnings I will never forget in my career, really a highlight. I was working on an integration project in South Africa. I was based in Johannesburg for about almost 2 years. And we were actually molding the new leadership team together. So 2 different cultures, company which acquired, DuPont, huge corporation, rules, processes. And the second leadership team, which used to be a part of the family-owned company, operating absolutely differently, much more entrepreneurial, much less rules and processes and so on. And we brought these 2 organizations together. And what I've done in that respect, first of all, of course, when we were planning bringing these 2 teams together, I worked with 2 leaders of both teams, preparing that, because preparation is key, because we had to bring in obviously consultants and we did all the assessments and whatever. I don't want to go into too many details here, because my colleagues, I'm sure, who went through this experience know that it's not a very easy process to do. And we had to take some tough decisions as a result of it on some of the individuals. And then when you bring these 2 teams together, your role is to be a mediator. Because during that prep period, which would normally take between 2 to 3 months, you need to get to know people very well. And that's about investing your time with the individuals.
Goes back to our point earlier, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And when you bring them together, your role is even more important, because you have to stay connected to everybody in the team. You need to talk to people offline. You need to sense that pulse of the organization, the pulse of the team, because in the beginning, no matter how well you prepare and no matter what you do, there will be clashes. Personal clashes related to misunderstandings. I experienced business meetings when people didn't want to talk to each other, down to things like people refusing to cooperate together. And then your role as an HR is making sure that these things are removed, because in the end of the day, it's not a kindergarten. It's an organization which is supposed to make profit for the shareholders and bring value to the society. Ensuring that these guys understand and helping them to overcome these difficulties becomes very important. And that's where you may not like it, because it's not easy. It's sometimes hearing the things from people and working as a mediator to a certain extent, but that's part of the job. And if you are able to sustain that diversity and help people build these bridges so that they become an effective team, then you really get one of the greatest satisfaction you can as an HR professional.
Definitely important. And it's an ongoing journey as well, right? So this isn't a project. This could take years. It's to be able to achieve, especially when you have two large organizations coming together. What was the main takeaways that you took from that experience? Anything you would have done differently?
One of the key experiences: never rely on what you know until today. Always be prepared that there will be something new, something which will surprise you. Again, very simple example. I'm a practical person. I like examples. I did underestimate how different the South African business culture is compared to Western Europe, American, Anglo-Saxon business culture. Because if you have a meeting, a discussion with a team in the US or whatever, even here in Switzerland, and you say, guys, what we're going to discuss today is confidential. It stays within the room. You don't need to say anything else. In South Africa, especially in the environment where it's a family company, even if you say it's confidential and it should stay in there, doesn't mean it. Yeah. And that's what I found out on my own mistake when I heard through people that the things which I was discussing, very sensitive, related to some separations and so on, at that meeting became public knowledge. Of course, I had some tough conversations with the people who were in this room afterwards, but the damage was done. But this is what I meant. Never assume that what you know and what you think is normal will be normal in the new situation you are facing. Always probe, test, sometimes ask questions. What is okay, what is not okay. Be prepared.
Even if you think you know the answer, still ask the questions, right? Fantastic. Well, look, that leads us quite nicely onto our quickfire round, Tim. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you have no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers.
Okay,
are you ready?
I'll try.
Everyone's reaction is like that as well. So what was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a successful HR leader?
The lack of confidence. Yeah, because I'm a person who is always doubting in myself. The person whom I always have to convince in something is me.
Yeah, completely relatable. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
In the very, very beginning, when I started to do HR, and as I explained earlier, I came to HR as an evolution of my career. One of my bosses, first bosses in HR, told me, look, as an HR person, you're going to see some strange things happening sometimes. You will see people being promoted where you would doubt. You would see people being put on the packages where you would say, why is that? You will see some things just because of the nature of your role as an HR. Yeah, he said, try to emotionally disconnect from it, because it will be always happening, and you will always be seeing strange things which will be surprising. And if you start taking them personal, that's going to be damaging for yourself. So I really took this advice initially like, okay. Yeah, but as I was evolving through my career, I was always referring to that. And now you asked me this question, it popped up in my head straight away. Because I still do remember that. And this is something which I try to use in my work. And tell myself, okay, that's it. That's how it is. And let's live with it. Let's move on.
Yeah, I think if you emotionally connected with every single one of those situations, it would be pretty exhausting. What's one book do you'd recommend to our audience and why?
Actually, this is the book which I've recently read. It's called Good Job Strategies. This is a book which is written by a lady. She's Turkish by origin. Now she is working and living in the US. And it's a fantastic book to professionals who work in manufacturing and operations in retail. It's really about how do you create the right strategy, the right type of environment for your organizations where people will feel valued and where you would provide your employers, the company you work for, with that workforce stability. A really great book. It inspired and generated a lot of ideas in my head when we were actually working on that project related to operations and the scorecards and the actions which I spoke about 5 minutes ago.
Fantastic. And could you share some internet resources that you use personally?
Gartner. I'm really lucky that we here are subscribed to it, and I get a lot of information from Gartner on various topics. It includes global supply chain, includes also the best practices in HR. And you know what I also learned myself by doing is always try to stay open-minded and connected to what's happening outside conferences, HR events. Go there and interact with your colleagues. One day it may not be like very useful, but the other day you might pick up some good, interesting ideas from it.
Yeah, that's why you need to come to our workshops, Tim.
Absolutely, Chris, with pleasure.
Quick plug in there. Yeah. And what's one thing about your business that you're most excited about?
It's the challenge. It's evolving organization, global supply chain and operations. Supply chain is at the place where we are introducing a lot of interesting, fantastic tools. I spoke about Control Tower. We are now at this place where, okay, we've reached a certain point in our development where we want the organization to be in 3 years from now. What do we need? What is our people strategy? What are our capabilities and so on? So that's really fantastic because I'm in the midst of this. And for my second customer, Europe operations, I also briefly spoke about that earlier. That this notion of redesigning the network, our footprint, future. Again, that's really for any professional. Doesn't matter where you are. I think having a role to play in designing this future, it's really great.
Fantastic. And I think everyone listening, I can certainly tell how excited you are by it as well. So you're definitely in the right role, in the right place. So congratulations. Obviously,
thank you.
I'll look forward to catching up with you in another sort of year and seeing where we are from here again. But thank you so much for taking the time out to come on the show, share your journey experience with everyone. Really appreciate your advice and guidance. Before we wrap up, if there's sort of one parting piece of advice you could give to other HR leaders out there, what would that be? And if they have any questions for you and want to reach out, where's the best way to get in touch?
Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to fill the empty spaces. If you see an empty space, fill it. Ask the question, step in. There is always an unknown. There is always a risk. But if you are concerned and afraid to take the risk, then it will be very difficult for you to move the needle and really step into the shoes of a partner, strategic partner, whatever you call it, trusted advisor. There are various terms we can use, but based on my career, based on what I learned, sometimes hard way, I think that this is really, really important. That's what your leaders, your customers will appreciate. The way to get in touch, probably the easiest one is through my LinkedIn profile. Timofei Mezheritsky. I will be very happy to respond and get in touch.
I'll make sure I copy your LinkedIn in the description so people don't misspell your name and don't find you.
Yeah, absolutely. That will be great. My surname, it's not the easiest one, Chris.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us. For everyone listening, as always, guys, if you head over to hrleaders.com, you'll find the show notes from this episode will be linked in there for you. So all of anything that was mentioned throughout today's show will be there, including the link to Tim's profile. Apart from that, thank you for taking the time out to join us, share the knowledge, and I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chris. It was my pleasure.
Fantastic.